All right, I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you survive prison if you have to do time. I got these tips from my uncle. He was incarcerated in another jail in the state system at the same time. Back in these days, you were still allowed to write from jail to jail. A lot has changed. I don't even know if you can do that inmate to inmate anymore. But we were allowed to do it, and he sent me a kite. He knew what he was talking about because he'd done some major incarcerations at real gangbanging institutions. I'm going to rattle these 5 off and then tell you why they work. Number 1, don't smoke. Number 2, don't gamble. Number 3, don't borrow. Number 4, avoid the gangs if at all possible. And number 5, watch who you make eye contact with. The don't smoke rule wouldn't have been a big deal if it was still allowable inside. But this was the time frame when they were phasing it out throughout Maryland. It was pretty much gone. Now, I smoked for the first, several months because I was able to get it. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I'm done. It's too much of a headache. But it's good advice because you can get caught up in that racket real quick. I mean, the COs are smelling for it. They're walking around. And if you got somebody who's a real hard charger, he's going to come wrap you up. It's an avoidable ticket for something that you don't need and is really just hard to get. Let it go. If you really, really need it that bad, when you get out, go ahead and spend the $10 on a pack of smokes now. But don't do it in there and put yourself in trouble for something that ain't going to get you anywhere. Don't gamble. This makes sense. I put a long form video on my YouTube about this before, where a guy I know, he got way, way, way in the hole. I mean, this guy was over his head in gambling debts. And the only way to pay it off, because he wasn't getting any money coming in, long story short, he moved into the cell with the guy he owed money to, and he had to give up his peanut butter. And he did. He did. I remember him walking out of the cell the next day. Everybody on the tier was like, bro, are you serious? I mean, he had another option. He could have checked in, but it would have caught up to him later. Or he could have just said no, and he would have got stabbed up because this guy was lethal, man. After I saw a dude doing the cowboy walk down the tier, I said, man, you were right, Unc. You were right all along. Don't borrow. I know a lot of people aren't going to like this one. Well, I go to the store. Sure, I feel you. Everybody's got a store on the tier, and sometimes you need to do it. Sometimes there's no food in the commissary. We've had times we ran out of noodles. So the guys in the store did all right. 3 for 2, 2 for 1, whatever the deal was that you had going on with them. If you can, avoid it, because again, if you get in over your head, when they come collecting, you got to kick out, or there's going to be a consequence. It lines up directly with what I say often. The wise man doesn't get himself into what the smart man has to get himself out of. If at all costs, avoid borrowing from people in the store. They're going to want something in return. Number 4, avoiding the gangs if at all possible. I know this is impossible in certain states, and you have to click up. You have to get with your race. You have to get with whatever set that you know. That's a reality in certain spots. Thankfully, it wasn't like that where I was. We had blacks and whites sitting down eating together, and it was no problem. The real problems were with higher level, gang issues in there, where it was like some more politics type stuff when the call comes and every yard just jumps off simultaneously. Man, if you're about that life, knock yourself out. Me, I was not interested in any way in joining a gang, because most of the guys in there seem pretty weak on their own, and they get in a gang, now you just got a whole bunch of dudes that are all weak together. And not all of them. There's some serious gangs that I'll show respect to every day, but I didn't want any part of it. I watched a guy with 30 days left get an 80-pound dumbbell smashed on his face. I mean, this dude looked like Sloth from the Goonies afterwards. We all thought he was dead. And then he ended up popping up like Lazarus. And he walks over, pops the button, and he's like, I need some help. And they're like, sit down, inmate, because they were still trying to clear the yard off. So unless you absolutely have to be in one, avoid it if you can. I understand it's not always possible, but this is a solid piece of advice. And number 5 is a big one. Watch your eye contact. You got to be very careful with who you lock eyes with in prison. Doesn't mean walk around with your head down all sheepish. There's a way to do it that you walk and you keep your eyes fixed on whatever it is, like almost like that 1,000-yard stare, because if you just start catching eye contact with a lot of different people, they'll take it as an instantaneous call to arms and they're ready to fight you. What you looking at? If you catch yourself locking eyes with the wrong dude, they're going to take it some kind of way. Everything is a microaggression in there. Everything is super sensitive. It's a fine line to walk because you don't want to let anybody believe that you're intimidated by them, but you also don't want to rattle cages. Now, granted, there's a whole bunch of other rules that you need to learn to survive in prison, but these are pretty foundational, basic ones that will help you out a lot along your trip if you're in there. It doesn't mean that you're a punk or that you're scared, but you're using your head and you're not getting into situations that you're going to have to bail yourself out of later. Be smart.